Retired Lieutenant Colonel Oakland McCulloch. So glad to have you on the Leaders Who Care series. Welcome.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this ever since we talked. What was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Something like that. Yeah. Me
Yeah.
too. Yeah, I think we're gonna have some fun and we're gonna show everybody, like, is it who's the show me state? Is that Kansas? Um
Missouri, I think.
Missouri, yeah. We're gonna show them why you are really a
Yeah.
leader who cares. So no pressure, but here we go. So best place to start, I find always, like everybody, is to, if you would briefly introduce yourself. However, I have to put an asterisk for men, especially on that question, because the first thing they do is they tell me their title and what they do at work. What I want to know
Yeah.
is about you, and if I may call you Oak, who you
Yes.
are, where you're from originally, where you are now, family, even something you've never told anybody before you wanted to reveal to the world now. That's cool too. But take it away.
Okay. Good. Good. Yeah. So I grew up in northern Illinois in a small little farm town. There were 1,200 people in our town, no stoplights. Great place to grow up. Everybody knew everybody, and I mean everybody knew everybody. I always tell people I couldn't get, as a kid, I couldn't get away with anything there. It, you do something wrong, and before you get home, they'd already called your parents and told them what you did. And it was a great place to grow up. It really was. Worked on farms most of my started when I was 12 until I went in the army at 18. I worked on farms, every kind of farm you can imagine. I worked on dairy farms, beef cattle farms, sheep farms, chicken farms, you name it. I've worked on it. Pig farms, um, and uh, and and I think that helped me develop the work ethic that I always had, and some of the discipline and all those things that I think helped me throughout my life. The other part that really helped me develop was I played sports. I played baseball from a little kid, played basketball, played football, played baseball, basketball, football in high school, and I was captain of my teams and loved every minute of it. And then I played baseball in college as well. So I think that certainly had an impact on my life growing up.
Yeah,
Then went off to college,
you left out the
met my
best,
wife,
but you left out the best sport.
which was
Ice
hockey.
hockey.
They didn't have hockey in my school.
All right, you're
Yeah,
forgiven.
I mean, we were lucky to have the three teams we had. We had 13 players on our football team. We had seven on our basketball team, and we had 11 on our baseball team. I mean, we were barely had enough to field a team. Um, but it, which meant that you got to play a lot, which
Right.
was fun. But you played hurt. There wasn't anybody to come in for you, so you just kept playing. But then I went off to college. I did 2 years at West Point.
Well, let's all get back.
Didn't graduate.
We'll get back to that in a minute. Do you have any brothers, sisters?
Okay.
Yeah, family?
Yeah, I had three brothers. I had an older sister who died. She was 6 and I was 4. She died of leukemia. Um, then I became the oldest in the family, and I had three younger brothers. One that was 2 years younger than me, one that was 7 years younger than me, and one that was 12 years younger than me. Um, and uh, and and my mom and dad couldn't. I am who I am today because of my dad. There's no doubt about that, good or bad, and there was plenty of bad in there. But I also give my mom a lot of credit for teaching me how to be a respectful young man, um, which I think my wife would thank her more than I do. And so again, had a good childhood.
Well, let's get into that for a minute.
Then I met my wife in college. Okay,
We'll come back to that. I want to start
go
the
ahead.
early years a little bit too.
Sure.
So what were you like really as a kid and then into a teenager? Did you um did you watch Mr. Ed on TV or Bonanza or whatever, all those type of things? Or were you like probably not playing with computers back then, but maybe,
No, there were no computers when I was a kid. I spent a lot of time outside, like most children our people that are our age,
Yeah.
like we did when we were kids. I think in the summertime, mom would kick us out of the house at 7 o'clock, and we'd come back in at dinner time. Every once in a while, we'd come in for lunch, and I grew up in Northern Illinois, so I was a Chicago Cubs fan. So, and at that time, Cubs didn't have lights; they played all day games. So every once in a while, I'd come in and watch a Cubs game as well. But we all had, and we were kind of discussing this before we turned on record. At that time, there were no recordings of shows. You either watched it when it was on or you missed it. It never
Totally.
came back. Reruns eventually, I guess. But so we had our family time in the evening when we would watch whatever show was on, whatever my dad wanted to watch, what we watched. So we had no say in that, but we would sit together. We always had a meal together, whether that was breakfast or dinner, depending on what was going on in our lives at that point. And my parents thought that was important, and it is important. I think that's part of the problem today in the world is we don't sit down together as a family for meals, for evening, whether you're watching television or just sitting around talking or playing a game or whatever it is.
Right.
We always did those things as when I was a kid, and again, I think that made a huge difference in my life.
Yeah, I agree. You have a base, you have a foundation, that has to be more than just like Thanksgiving or whatever type of thing. And it seems so simple that we almost overlook how important it really was to have that home base type of thing, but there for you. So I know
Yeah,
you,
just to be a feel like you belong,
yeah.
and I think that's huge. And again, I think that's part of the problem in today's world is kids don't have that today.
Well, they do say, I really love the whole thing about blue zones, where they talk about the thing that the people that live the longest and are the happiest, it's right food, right diet, right exercise and all that. But they said the thing that does fill people's hearts and souls more than anything is belonging by far.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and I think we got to get back to that. And not just in the family, but you know, I don't know about you, but again, I grew up in a small town. Once a year, we would block off the street and we'd have a street party. And
Mm.
everybody in the neighborhood would come, they'd bring their dish or whatever it was they wanted. And we'd all the kids would be out there playing and we'd eat and we'd just spend time together. Today, what I see so often is somebody comes home from work, they pull in the garage door goes down, and you don't see them again until tomorrow morning when they get in their car and go to work.
Right.
Neighbors don't even know each other's names, much less know anything about them. And I think that's part of the problem as well, because we don't have neighborhoods that are actually neighbors. That you may live next to them, but you're not really a neighbor because you don't do anything with them.
Yeah, I agree 1,000,000%. We were outside also till whenever until you hear Mark dinner type of thing. And and
Yeah, or the street light came on. That's the old saying.
exactly. And you
Yeah,
know,
and I used to I used to fish all the time. We'd go back into the woods. We had some woods that wasn't too far away from us, and build forts and play, cowboys and Indians or whatever we were playing at that time. But it was just our time to enjoy just our friends and nature a little bit.
yeah, nature is a big deal. I don't think we get enough of that, and I think people are craving it. And I saw something the other day. We have this thing called FOMO, where everybody's the fear of missing out things. And but brilliantly, someone changed it to JOMO, which is the joy of missing out. And I think maybe that's a good way to go. We don't have to be so stressed out about missing out what we're not really missing out anything if you
Yeah.
do all
But
that stuff.
is it really value added, or is it just something on a list that you're checking off? If it's something you really want to do, then you ought to do it. But if you're just checking off on a list, then is it really value added to your life?
Yeah. It's part of we can go into that a little bit later. I guess it's part of the whole mental health issue right now too. Is all of that, the pressure, the stress, the missing out, all that. Well, you talked a little bit before about, your journey, and you had pretty extensive education. Just make sure I don't miss anything. You had West Point, I've heard of that. You had Northern Illinois University. You got your bachelor's, and you got your U.S. Army Command Master's, History and Leadership. That's all. Nothing special. And by
No,
the way, I think history is something that we're not getting enough of either to learn from as
I
well.
agree. And my bachelor's was in history, and my master's was in a combination history and leadership. And and I give my high school history teacher the credit for me majoring in history. And I stayed in contact with him until about 18 months ago. He died, and but I all these years I kept in contact with him. And when I'd go back to my hometown on occasion, I would make sure I always got a chance to see him. And once we got texting and email, I stayed in contact with him that way. But he just made it so much fun learning history in high school. And it wasn't about dates and although he encouraged us to learn dates, but he taught history in a way that I like to look at it. What were the events that led it? What happened to lead us to an event? What happened on the event, and what was the consequence of that event? And then that leads you into the next group of events that lead to the next piece of history that we want to talk about. And that just made so much sense to me. Instead of just talking about that one day or that one event, what were the things that caused that event to happen, and then what were the results of that, of the results from that event? And so that just made a lot of sense to me, which is why I majored in history, got my master's in history, and then the leadership piece. I've been doing leadership for 40 years. It was just too
Right.
easy to add the leadership piece to the history. So
Yeah.
it was but I give him all the credit for that. I
Well,
really do.
it's interesting because we stayed in touch with people I know in my elementary school with our grade 7 teacher, Mr. Hersey, for years and years and years, who was an influence on us. And because he told stories, and that's really what history is about. Also, he told stories, and he made us feel good. He was strict as hell, and yet we loved
Right.
him incredibly. And he passed away a little ways ago now, but he was an amazing teacher. And I think to the point of how your history teacher taught you that um, is so important because we don't seem to be learning from history anymore. What we need to learn from history,
Yeah.
and it's dumb.
Yeah. I saw a quote the other day that really, really hit me. It said, the only lesson that we're learning from history is that we don't learn anything from history. And that's sad because you need to. Now, will that same event or those same circumstances come up again? Probably not. But the lessons you can learn from those things in history, you can apply to the things that are happening today, without a doubt.
I think actually evil people, if you will, learn more from history than good people learn from history. Unfortunately.
Unfortunately,
Exactly. So is
yeah,
that what intrigued you to get in the armed services, or what? How did that happen?
yeah. So again, I grew up in a small town. I grew up in a relatively poor. I won't say we were poor, but we didn't have a whole lot of money, and opportunities there in the small town that I grew up in. You either worked in a factory or something like that. Well, I knew I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be a leader. Um, Again, I was the captain of my sports teams. I was president, student government, student class. Um, and so I kind of knew I wanted to be a leader. And as I was going around trying to pick colleges, and I applied for all the ROTC scholarships, Army, Navy, Air Force. Um, and then one day I was sitting in the guidance counselor's office. So I kind of knew I wanted to go in the military. But how I got to West Point was I was sitting in the guidance counselor's office, and one of the other young ladies who was at the top of her class, just like I was, walks in. during my meeting with the guidance counselor, just barges in and starts complaining that she didn't get into Harvard. And I said, really? You thought you were going to get into Harvard? And she said, well, where are you going? I said, well, I haven't made up my mind yet. I said, but when I do, I'll tell you. And she left, and I had applied to a bunch of schools, and I had scholarships to play baseball at a bunch of schools, but nothing big, no big name like Harvard. And I said, so where else can I apply? And he goes, well, you want to go in the military? Why don't you apply to the academies? And so I did. I applied to all of the academies, got into all of them except the Air Force Academy. They didn't want me. And I didn't win an Air Force ROTC scholarship either. They didn't want me for some reason. I don't know. But so I did. I applied and I got accepted. And the day I got accepted, I went up to her and I said, going to West Point.
And where was she going?
But I kind of knew that's the route I wanted to go. I wanted to be a military officer, and I knew that that's what I wanted. Probably about my junior year in high school, maybe second semester sophomore, I had made up my mind that's what I really wanted to do.
How do you feel? We all say thank you for your service, and I think most people mean it sincerely. But also some people think it's like some people think I know, like, I hope they know I really mean it, or that I'm not just saying it because it's something you say. And then there's some people that whatever. How do you feel about that? And can you share like what you felt like while you were in the service, while you went into the also the recruiting ops officer, and just how you feel about those stages in your life, and people recognizing or not recognizing, people in our armed forces.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Anytime somebody says that to me, I just assume that they really mean it. I don't go the negative route. I figured if they really didn't mean it, then they probably wouldn't say anything. At least
Right.
that's my point of view. And my answer back to them is always exactly the same. That it was an honor to serve the people of this country, and it really was. I wouldn't trade a single minute of it. It really was an honor. And why I did the recruiting piece is because, again, as a young man, I didn't have a whole lot of options if I stayed in my hometown there. And I got to make some choices. I got to do some things that nowhere else in the world does somebody who comes from the background that I come from. My father never finished the 8th grade. My mother never finished the 10th grade. Yet I got to go to the United States Military Academy at West Point. Nowhere else in the world does that happen. And so I always figured if I served to protect the rights of your kids or somebody else's kids, that they had the same opportunities that I had growing up. And to be the recruiter for Army ROTC as a Department of Army civilian, I really did approach it as it wasn't about me. It was about those young men and women, trying to get them in the right place to do what they wanted to do. And I would always tell them that when I said, look, the school that I recruit for has a great ROTC program. It's a great school. That it may not be for you. And if it's not, tell me what school you want to go to, and I'll connect you with the Army ROTC recruiter at that school.
Mm-hmm.
Because it wasn't about me. It was about them.
Yeah. I think it's fantastic. I've heard certain military people I know saying, kind of like you said, it's an honor. And also some of them would say, and I'm grateful that you're able to do the celebrations, the this, the that you're able to do, that we're able to do because we did serve, to have that freedom to do it. Which is an interesting answer also.
That's right.
Yeah. We trademarked the term.
I mean, it really is.
Good.
Really, we did support and defend the American way of life. And I think it's special. It really is. I've been in 45 countries on 5 continents. I've seen lots of different places. Some of those I don't ever want to go back to, by the way. But America is a special place, and it was worth defending, and defending the way of life for the people in this country. It really was.
Well, yeah. Well, and thank you for that. For real. Thank you for that. We trademarked and know that we trademarked the term leaders who care, and we know that leaders who care actually understand the value we're talking about of every individual, like you took care of every person where they should be, and value that their well-being. And we look at well-being as being financial, physical, and mental well-being, like the whole package, whether you're in armed services or you're in sports or you're in business type of deal. It's been proven that I said before from blue zone studies and whatnot that belonging is the thing that fills people's hearts and souls more than anything. Can you share like or what motivated you to share your experiences and knowledge about leadership now, from the US Army and from civilian positions?
Yeah, so my last assignment on active duty, I ran an Army ROTC program, and I went around and I spoke to high school students because I didn't have a recruiting officer. I kind of did my own recruiting, and I spoke to high school students and college students. And one of the things I noticed was that a lot of them were lost. They didn't know what they wanted to do. They had no idea. And even the ones who did, I'd ask them what they wanted to be, what profession and what they wanted to do. And they'd tell me the profession. And they say, I want to be a leader. And I'd say, okay, what does that look like? What does it take to be a good leader? And they had no idea, zero. They probably wanted to be a leader for the wrong reasons because they wanted the title, they wanted the privileges, they wanted the better pay. And that's okay. Leaders get those things, and that's okay as long as that's not the only reason you want to be the leader.
Right.
If that's the only reason you want to be a leader, then please go do something else because you're not going to be a good one. And so I came up with a talk about what good leadership looks like, what it takes to be a good leader. And the number one thing in there, which kind of goes back to the things that we're talking about, is selfless service. It's not about you, and yet it's all about you. It's not about you in the title you get or the privileges you get or the pay you get. It's all about you in how you treat and empower the people you have the privilege to lead. And it is a privilege to be the leader. And unfortunately, I think too many leaders today have forgotten that it is a privilege. And I'd always get somebody who would come up to me afterwards and say, well, Colonel McCulloch, I want my next promotion. I want my next pay raise. And I said, if you do this servant leadership thing right, you're going to get those things because you're going to create better workers and hopefully better people, because I think that's part of being a leader, who are going to work harder for you and are going to accomplish things, and your organization's going to be better, and you're the leader, so you're going to get credit for it, and you're going to get your promotion and your pay raise. But you got it for the right reason, not because you were greedy or selfish, but because you helped other people become better people and better workers.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I had a Deloitte partner tell me a long time ago, if you want to be a partner, act like one now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But so that kind of drove me into my talk that I do. And then, I published my book in February 2021. And really from that point on, I started going out on the speaking circuit and talking about leadership. And I do leadership development training with companies. And I just think that we we are not doing a good job of coaching, mentoring, teaching, developing junior leaders in this country today. I think we don't do it as well as we used to. And we are going to reap what we sow, I promise you. And if we don't do a good job of creating this next generation of leaders, then we deserve everything we get.
So now you get into my favorite subject, one of my favorite subjects, and I learned so much in sports from great coaches that I had and teachers that were also coaches. Coaching hockey, playing hockey, predominantly hockey, the biggest sport that you missed because your town didn't have a rink, and on and off the ice. And I learned that teams win championships. I interviewed an executive in the NHL a number of years back, and he said, our goal every year is absolutely to win the championship, but we're not naive. It's hard to win that every year. Our mandate is to have a winning season every year. And he said, a winning season is not just what you see about the players, it's the secretary in the office, it's the guy that sits on the Zamboni and cleans the ice, it's the usher, because those are the people that are impacting the culture of the players and everything. Share with me your thoughts on creating a team culture, especially when you talk Army and stuff. You got a diversity and diversity isn't just colors, diversity of experiences, ideas, traditions, background, everything. How do you create that as a leader?
Yeah. So number one, I think you have to concentrate on winning, like that coach was saying, you know. And again, I think we're getting away from that. We're not teaching kids today, and haven't for a long time, the importance of winning. Now, are we going to win every time? Just like that coach said, no, we're not going to win every time. You also got to learn how to lose as well. But we got to have that winning attitude. We got to start teaching that again. And that was always my philosophy when I took over an organization. Part of my culture was we're going to win. We're going to be the best we can be. We're going to be the best at whatever we do, or at least we're going to try. And what I would generally do is I would start with things that I knew they could do and accomplish. So I'd set a bunch of goals for myself that I knew I wanted to hit them to hit, and we'd start with a simple one because I'd build their confidence, and then we'd go to a little bit harder, and I'd kind of train them up to get to that point, and then we'd do that test and we'd hit it, and then we'd go to the next one. And I think that for me always worked. Build the trust, build the confidence, let them see that they can do what you're asking them to do. But I think a large part of that is the culture piece that I always tell this story. We were in one of our posts, I think it was California, and my kids were going to play soccer, and we took them to the first meeting, and the coach said, well, we don't keep score in this league. I said, what do you mean you don't keep score? He said, well, everybody's a winner and everybody's a champion. And I looked over at my kids and I said, we will keep score because it matters. My dad, when I was growing up, my dad had this thing called the 75% rule. He said, son, if you can't do something better than 75% of the people doing it, then you need to do one of two things. You either need to figure out how to get better at it, or you need to go find something else to do because obviously it doesn't matter to you. And that was his message, that you got to keep trying to get better and better at it because other people are trying to do that as well. And you should want to be the best at whatever it is you do. And he instilled that winning attitude in me. And I don't care. I want to win all the time. Again, I don't win all the time, but I want to win all the time. I go into every game, every situation that I'm going to win. I don't care if I'm playing old maid with my 11-year-old granddaughter. I want to win.
Okay. But I do, I remember, I heard a coach tell one of my youngest son at one time, he was like 12, he was yelling at them in the dressing room, do you want to win or do you want to have fun? And he was sending a wrong message. I gave him the
Yeah,
benefit of the doubt that he was trying to do something there, but that you have more fun, to your point, you have more fun when you tried your best to win. And then if you lose, but you tried your best, you
that's
tried your
right.
best. If you lose and you didn't try your best, that's
Yeah,
no fun either. So I agree
no,
100%.
it's not. It haunts you. It haunts you if you didn't give your best. Absolutely.
You know what else, and this relates to sports as well as anything. And I'm talking to some big time sports players right now, but actually bringing ice hockey, believe it or not, to Saudi Arabia. There's a whole thing we're talking about, which would be very, very unbelievable. But when I talk to sports people, I say, and I said it to an investor the other day, we're missing a huge education part right now. 98% of the kids, or 99% of kids that are playing sports all over the place, don't go pro. So the whole opportunity of education, what we're talking about, leadership and education while they're playing sports, is massive. That is not being done necessarily elsewhere or can't be done elsewhere. And there is coaching certifications and whatnot, but I think it should be way more teaching them so many things about. I had a coach that taught me, and I've used it forever, visualization before going into the game. and I coached it too, saying
Yeah.
they actually visualized themselves to the point where by the time they got on the ice, my players had already been playing, basically, in their mind and stuff. So it's a big
Yeah.
opportunity for education
Yeah.
about leadership and teammates and everything.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely agree. And I had a great basketball coach that I still stay in contact with today, Coach Terry Niedzwiecki, who taught us a lot of that stuff and understood. He understood even back then, 100 years ago, that it wasn't just about putting together a good basketball team. It was about helping to develop good young men
Right.
who were going to be good husbands, good fathers, good productive members of society. And he understood that. And that was one of the things that he did. And one of the reasons that a lot of us stay in contact with him today, because he was a great mentor uh, for me growing up. He was one of the first mentors that I ever really can remember. Um, but going back to the teams piece, building teams, I think you're absolutely right. People want to belong to something bigger than them, and I think most people do. And so that's what you got to provide for them. Make sure that they understand that it's not just a job. You come to work, and you're part of the family. You're part of the
Yeah.
team that comes together more than just coming to work and drawing a paycheck and then going home. You actually care about each other. And it starts with the leader. If you as a leader are a caring person, that doesn't mean that you let them do whatever they want.
That's not
In
caring.
fact, it's the exact opposite of that. You make being a caring servant leader means you are going to make them do things they don't want to do because it's in their best interest, even if they don't know that it is at that point. Someday they will, just like my basketball coach. Um, but you show that you care, that you care about them not only as a member of that team, but as a person. And I got it. You got to keep the leader-led relationship line there somewhere, but that doesn't mean that you can't get to know them and know who they are and what their dreams are and what their family looks like and all those kinds of personal things.
Yeah, 100%. I think it even teaches you how to be a good parent. In fact, I think some of the kids I've taught are teaching their parents how to be good parents sometimes as well in
Yeah.
that sense. And the player that knows the coach cares about him and believes in him and trusts him will do this. Doesn't matter how many, even in pro, doesn't matter how many zeros are on that paycheck after. Then they have a coach that they believe trusts and cares about them and believes in them. They'll do anything for that coach. So I think you're right on. I want to segue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to segue a
That's
little bit
human.
here.
That's human nature. That's human nature.
100%. So they say the little segue here. They say the fourth industrial revolution is about AI and technology. There's no doubt about it. But they're saying also now that the fifth one is about humanity. Um, can you share with us in your career how you've leveraged or utilized the massively changing technology and, like we talked about earlier, the fast and furious AI technology that's coming out into being a leader with everything that's going on with tech?
Yeah, and I, certainly I think good leaders use the technology that is available to them, and it's a tool, just like anything else. It's not the end all be all. It's not the answer to all the problems in the world. And you got to approach it that way, that it is just another tool you have in your toolbox, um, that you can use to help improve not only your organization, but maybe the lives of the people who you are, again, have the privilege to lead. So I think that that's the way I always approached whatever new technology came along.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the golden apple. It was a tool that I could use. And as we talked about before the show, technology is a double-edged sword. There's good and bad things about everything. And it just depends on how you, the person using that technology, uses it. Take this for example. This is amazing. We wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for this technology. But there's also some very bad things that goes on with this kind of technology. So
Yeah.
it's a tool that we have to figure out how it will benefit our organization and the people in that organization that we have the privilege to lead.
Yeah, yeah, right on. Well, you know, they say in LA that we gotta leave them wanting more so we can do a sequel. So we may have to do that. Actually, but I do have
I'm
one more.
happy to do that. You tell me when, I'll come back.
All right, I might have to do a leadership series for sure. But the last question on this part. Um, Klein told me in 2021, Klein told me, but the year 2020 to them was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought it was brilliant. And in some ways we feel like it was yesterday and also years ago still, you know, that year.
Yeah.
Now we're fast and furious, you know, already into 2025. Can you share with everything that's happened what you're most grateful for and also what you're most hopeful for?
Yeah, well, I know exactly what I'm most grateful for, and that's two things: my faith and my family. As I got in the military, you don't always have a say in where you're going and how long you're going to be. I was in the first Gulf War when my daughter was born. I didn't even see my daughter until she was 5 months old. So, what the way I always looked at it was when I'm home, I got to be home and I got to be there for them. And that has even become more and more important to me as I get older. Now that I'm a grandfather, some of the most important times for me is spending time with my wife. We have times that we sit aside. We listen to we're doing the Bible in a Year podcast, and so every day we sit down together and we listen to that. We do some other things that we set aside so that we always try to sit down and eat together. So to me, family is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And faith has become more and more important to me as I've gotten older as well. So those are the things that I'm most
Grateful for.
most uh, grateful for. And what I would love to see is we got to bring not only this country but the world back together. We have split this country so far apart, or at least we make people think that they are, that things are not as good as it could be in this country. And when I say that, and I've said it many times when I go out and talk, they say, how do we start that? And I said, you start with what we have in common. Because if you start with what we have different, we're never going to get back to what we have in common.
Of
You
course.
start with what we have in common, that we want better lives for our kids. We want to be able to put a roof over our family's head. We want to feed our family. We want a good job. Start with what we have in common, and then we can work our way out. And then maybe we can make some compromises. Because you're never going to agree on everything, but you might be able at that point be able to make a compromise that's going to satisfy everybody.
Yeah, I agree. We need to, as what we call in a program called Nonflict that we work with. That's amazing, and the title Nonflict is a good one too. Is we need to actively listen to each other because just like in everything we talked about, if a person really feels they were heard, then even if you still disagree, there's the edge that is taken off. That yeah, you really heard me, so you must really care, and then you go from there. So,
Well, that kind of goes back to that. I've heard people say it before. It's not my saying, but you know, when did we get to the point where if I disagree with you, I have to hate you? You know, Disagreement is a part of life.
mhm.
We don't want robots. We don't want everybody who thinks the same and does the same. We want everybody to have that own piece of themselves and their own opinions and views. And 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 then
Yeah.
we just got to figure out a way to make it all work together. That's the what seems to be the hard part right now.
Well, if you the program Nonflict, and we can get into another time, it talks about how conflict is a good thing. It actually is different ideas, not something you hate somebody over. Exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about. And then
that's
if
where
you
progress
listen,
comes from.
yeah, yeah. Otherwise, we all have no new ideas and we just hate each other. Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a positive guy too, but I'm most grateful that I have a new friend now who and that you are a leader who cares. And I'm grateful and hopeful because you are a leader who cares that I think there's a lot more positive to look forward to. So thank you for that, and thank you for being on the series. Really, really appreciate it. And again, thank you for your service. That's definitely appreciated.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.